Welcome everybody to the Little Athletics New South Wales Sunday Coaching School. My name is Darren Wenser. I'm the Head of Coach and Volunteer Development at Little Athletics New South Wales. We are very lucky to have Ian Hatfield as our guest today. Now, amongst many things that Ian has done over a very, very long career, Ian developed Ryan Gregson from a little athlete into an international athlete. He also has coached as an athlete, a track and field athlete, Sally Fitzgibbons, who, if you recognise that name, is a professional surfer and I believe was world #1 in 2019. And Ian coached Sally down the Wollongong area when she was a really good middle distance runner, and she actually won the 8 and the 15 100 metres at the Youth Olympics in Sydney in 2007. Ian, I believe, coaches Chloe Tai, who won the 2019 National 1500 metre title. And he is the middle and long distance coach for the Athletics New South Wales Target Talent Program. Ian, thanks for joining us tonight. It is great to have you.
My pleasure, Darren. And hello, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Fantastic. Ian, I'd love to go all the way back. I did warn you about this, and I'd love to ask you the question so that people know a bit about your background. Where did you grow up, and what were your main memories of playing sport as a kid?
All right. Well, I was born in Bangalow Hospital in 1943, but I was born and bred in the north coast town of Byron Bay, the most easterly point in Australia. So naturally, in those early 40s and 50s, we didn't have athletics clubs as we have them now, of course. So most of my sporting periods were in the surf. I was a member of, naturally, Byron Bay Surf Club. The cadets went through all that. We did play rugby league in the town. We had a town team. Just on that, we played in weight division at the time. I sort of progressed from 5'7" to 7'7". Now, 7 stone 7, for those that are not sure, that's about 48 kilograms. So I wasn't very big, but so I suppose the memories are, yeah, I had a great life in that, sun, surf and everything. I probably got sunburnt more times than you can remember. I'm a bit fair-skinned and we rubbed coconut oil on us and so forth. But athletics-wise, yeah, look, the only time we probably did athletics was at school. As I said, we didn't actually have any town athletic clubs or anything, so we just ran at school the different carnivals and so forth like that. So, yeah, so I lived there for 17 years before I moved down to the south coast to a place where I live now, Albion Park. So that, in brief, is sort of where I grew up and so forth.
Thanks for that, Ian. And how did you get involved in coaching? Where did coaching all start for you, Ian?
Well, I suppose I do go back to the early years. I love sport. I love running. I can remember watching the 1956 Olympic Games on a black and white TV in a shop at Byron Bay. We didn't have one. So when I came down here, once again, I basically played rugby league for Albion Park, and I didn't really get involved in athletics until my 3 children. I've got 3 children, a daughter and 2 sons. And then back in the 1980s, late 70s and early 80s, the kids got into athletics. We were a member of Lake Illawarra Athletic Club. But then we were prompted to start our own athletics club. And so Albion Park Little Athletic Club was formed in 84. I was the first president, and our 3 children went through that. Our youngest son, Greg, who's just turned 40, he probably went the furthest in it in terms of success, you might say. So I probably got involved there. I tried to coach him, but as people might know, he used to say I was a silly old FART and didn't know what I was talking about. So, but he probably got me involved more in coaching. So I've probably been coaching now probably 30, 35 years all up. But and I left my employment in 96, so I've probably been full-time coaching for the last 24 years.
And what would you say, Ian, during all that time, what are some of your highlights? What are some of your favourite moments as a coach?
Um, oh, look, they are many and varied. I suppose seeing my own children compete was good. As I said, my youngest son was the captain of the first ever World Schools Cross Country in 1995 over to Antalya. I was pretty proud of that. I suppose, look, I get excitement and enjoyment out of seeing any young athlete improve, whether they're doing it at school or zone or carnival or whatever. I suppose if you want to look at overall success, there's no doubt that coaching Ryan and when he achieved the success and many Australian titles and representing Australia both at World Champs and so forth. Seeing Chloe win last year was good, and also with Sally, watching her develop. But it's hard to sort of pick out one particular highlight. I suppose, yeah, as I said, they're many and varied. But yeah, just to help and see kids do well is a great thrill.
And Ian, you just a couple of really well-known names that we've mentioned there. With Ryan, you coached him from a very young age too, didn't you?
Yeah, actually, I coached his sister first. She was about 8. She was a hurdler, and then Ryan wanted to come along. So he was probably 6 or 7 when he started, and probably coached him right through till he was 20. He then naturally started to go overseas, and because I probably couldn't be with him all the time, he joined Nick Beddoe's group, as most know, and then he basically sort of ended up joining with Nick. So, but for those years, the first few years, Nick and I got on, very well. I learned a lot of him, and always respect his knowledge and so forth. So, yeah, so probably probably 14 years. So I developed him. Hopefully, I helped him. Had some input into his success.
Yeah, and Sally Fitzgibbons. I mean, apparently you still catch up with Sally, do you? Is that right?
Yeah, actually, Sally, she used to train with Ryan, and I think they competed in the Youth Olympics back in early 2000s. So Sally trained. She was an 800 and 1500 run, and it just got to the stage she had to make that choice: go surfing full time or go athletics. And I did tell her, I said, "You go surfing, so you're going to make more money out of surfing. When you finish, win the world title, come back and go to running." So and Sally was back in town because there's no surfing on at the moment. She was back in town a couple of weeks ago. She rang me up and said, "Can we catch up for a session?" And so, which we did. I had to ride, of course. She ran, and we had a coffee afterwards. So yeah, we filled me all in about the world of surfing and so forth. So yeah, she was quite an exceptional athlete, Sally.
It's amazing when you have to make the choice between a career in sport like that, isn't it? It's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, Ian, we're really interested in your again having good success as a coach and being a coach for so long. What are some of the real coaching beliefs, some of the philosophies, some of the standards, or whatever that you really embed your coaching into, that you really anchor it? What are some things you really believe in as a coach?
All right, and I'll prefix it all by saying, whilst I have coached some sprinters and hurdlers and 400 runners, I'm probably now primarily, and probably since Ryan, I'm probably, let's say, an 1500 metre coach. Probably the most important thing I look at in developing young athletes, I'm not a great believer in volume. Even with Ryan, we never did a great lot of volume. So I suppose I impressed that much along athletes, and that's probably one of the really firm things that I have as a standard, that there's not too much volume, and that we've got to basically progress very steadily. The other thing I think it's important is you have to communicate with your athletes very much so. As a coach, I think we have standards, but I think we also have to listen to athletes, communicate, listen to them. They know their bodies, and I think you have to have that very good working relationship with your athlete. The big thing is this: you cannot command respect, no matter what age and everything. You have to earn respect from your athletes, and that comes maybe over a number of years. But whilst you may have definite procedures and things you want them to do, you can't be a dictator type thing. You can't say do this or else. You've got to earn that respect. So I think they're the important things. A is to progress steadily, communicate, work hard and earn respect, and listen to your athletes very much.
Now, people have had the chance to submit questions in advance of this session, Ian, and list what they wanted to learn from you today. And I reckon it came under two areas. There was a few questions about technique.
Yep.
And there are a few questions about training methods and programs. So if we could just maybe deal with some technique first. And I suppose when it comes to distance running, what do you see as the fundamentals of distance running technique? Is there anything that you really think an athlete requires when it comes to a technique for distance running?
All right. No doubt it's very important to have the correct running technique, style and technique. A lot of people say it's so important in sprinting, but it's also very important in distance running. And in that way, you've got to remember to conserve your energy, and your style and technique is so very important that you don't overexert, that you do conserve energy. So as young athletes, we still work very much on style and technique. I'm very much a believer in practicing specific drills that imitate your running action. I don't do drills for the sake of doing drills. I break a running action down, whether it be from high knees, the A skip, the B skip type of thing. It's very important to practice and practice and practice. I've probably got a saying, practice makes permanent, not perfect. Because if it's permanent, it stays with you and it'll become perfect. So I'm very strong on running. I mean, even your arms, we practice probably every time. I'll get athletes to practice their running action because, and as I said, drills are so very important. So I concentrate very much on that. In terms of distance running, it is all about pace. It is all about pacing yourself. But in saying that, and as they progress, we naturally do have to do a lot more endurance work, volume to some extent, rather than you would a 400-metre runner or a 100-metre runner. But you still don't need to overdo it. And we sometimes practice a lot of race practice, turning into pace judge rather than sprinting for that first 400 and 800 and then got nothing left. But that comes with experience. And sometimes it takes a while to practice that and get that right.
So you mentioned running technique, Ian. What do you look for if you're standing back looking at an athlete? What are you hoping to see with their technique?
Okay, as I said, first of all, I do like to see their arms. In terms of running tall, I use that a lot. So you're upright. Your arms are in that running position, 90 degrees all the time. Because if you drop your arms, you've got to bring them back up. That takes time and energy. So it is there. I think a lot of comes from having strong in your core area, and we practice a lot of core work. The other thing that, to me, the most important muscle in running, and I believe whether it be sprinting or distance, is still your glute muscles, very much. And you have to teach your athletes, even from an early age, to activate your glutes. You might have big glutes, but if they're not, as we say, turned on. So we do a lot of work with resistance bands in terms of turning your glutes on, activating them, getting them to activate in that leg pull through. So we look at a lot of that. So basically the cues are arms, very much, being very tall, shoulders not too far back, having that nice fraction of a little angle dip, and naturally try to get the high knees to get the stride length and so forth, as long as we don't overstride. So they're the main things.
Okay, and I know it's hard to describe, in this medium, but an exercise or a couple of exercises that you would do with resistance bands, Ian, can you describe them, or are they too difficult to describe? Have a go. What do you think?
Yeah, well, basically with I should have had one here. Basically, resistance bands. We try to do 4 or 5 exercises. So one is that we put them just above our knee, and if you can see, no, you probably can't. No, you won't see.
I told you to be difficult.
Yeah, look, just above your knee, and you stand in a quarter squat position, and you go to the side, and back. Then you can do it diagonally, and so forth. Another one is you can lie on your back in a bridge position, bands around just above your knee, and you will open, close your leg, open, close your leg, open, close your leg. The other one is to lie on your side. You're in a right angle like a clam, a giant clam. Open up, open up, open up. So they're just a few, and you ask the athletes afterwards, what's burning? My bum. It's your glutes that are burning. And I really believe that the more you practice those, and we don't do them every session, but we try to, as part of our drills, try to do those glute activation exercises. So they're very important in terms of exercises. Yeah, I mean, we do lots of that. The high knees. High knees are very important. The A skip and the B skip, if people understand that. We do a lot of those to get our technique right.
You've done well on your demonstrations there, Ian. Someone in the questions, I don't know if you've come across this before, but someone said, how do you deal with a running crossover gait? And now, if people are not, familiar with that, I suppose the best way to describe it is, and I don't know whether you've seen it before in any of your athletes and you've had to fix it, but if an athlete's running along a line, for example, their feet are crossing over the line and landing on either side of the line. So, have you seen that before, and have you had to deal with it before, Ian?
Yeah, you find that it's a lot of I won't say it's common, but you do see that. Look, as was with all the experience you have, I'm very keen, and I'd say athletes have to have a big support crew around them, their parents. But the other thing is to have good physios and so forth. So if an athlete I see has got a problem, I sometimes say, go to your physio to have it checked out to see what the issue really is, because they are the professionals in that field. And you'll find a lot of the time, the physios will prescribe a particular exercise, and it might be your hip coming over or your leg coming over in front. It might be that when your foot goes down, you pronate, so you're turning in. And there are many drills, but I really like them to probably see a physio first. And sometimes the physios will say, the other thing I do a lot of, I video. And then I get the athlete to take that to the physio. And if I can, I'll go in with the physio as well. And they might say, well, it's caused from this. Here's a good exercise to do. And it might be one that I've thought of. But I really find having the physios on side is so important.
Physio first. That's a good piece of advice.
I found over the years a lot of us probably try to self-diagnose. So look, some of the things are very evident in young athletes. Sever's disease around the heel. Every kid around 10 or 12 or 13 will get Sever's disease. Once again, if it is Sever's, you can't do a lot other than manage, back off a bit, stretch your calves, etc. Osgood slatters around your knee is another one. But I think before you try to be a self-diagnosed too much, you're best to get an expert opinion first, what the problem could be.
Okay. Now, as I said, so we've covered a little bit about technique there. People were really interested in training methods and programs. I know this is a big topic, Ian, and we can only spend a certain amount of time on it, but a very broad question here. A beginner, a primary school level athlete, or whatever we want to term them, where should you start with, I suppose, if we call it distance running training, I suppose? What are your beliefs there? What are your methods there?
I think there's two things you've got to consider. Their biological age and their athletic age. So you might have an athlete come to you, okay, they're 11 or 12, but they've started little A's from 5. So they've got 6 or 7 years of little A's activities and training to some extent, as compared to someone that's never run before that comes to you at 12. So that's a problem you may have to sort of reconsider a lot. But those younger ones, I'm not too worried about, okay, as I said, I don't like them doing too long a distance too soon. And I think the schools, to some extent, have got it pretty right in terms of, you know, a school-age kids of 12, they still only, I think, run 2 or 3K. And that's good. I've got to say this, I hate to see 8 and 9 or 10-year-old kids go and do in the city to surf time and time again. It annoys me because their body is not ready for long distance yet. So I'm not too worried about a kid of 11 or 12 that comes doing heaps of distances. I will spend hours and hours and hours getting their technique drilled right and so forth. I mean, we can do a bit of distance, but I'm not too worried about them going out there pounding the pavement at that age. They've got to get the basics right, the basics of style, technique and running and all the drills that go with it. Sure, we can do some distance, hills and so forth like that, but not volume after volume.
Can you give us a snapshot, maybe a few snapshots of what one of their sessions might look like? Do you have any advice of the type? You've just given us, you know, some things you might include, but what might a session look like for an athlete of that age you were just speaking about, Ian?
Okay, well, if I can look at an athlete, say of 11 or 12, that is, he could be, say, in high school, and he's come through the little A's thing. So he would probably train maybe twice a week in terms of, let's call it a hard session. I love hills, so we might do, at that age, they can still do a hill session. We might find a hill 300 metres at a gradual thing. And we might just do strides up that hill, jog back. Strides up. We might do 6 to 8, maybe 5, 6 or 7 reps of that. We might find a really shorter hill and we might do 3 or 4 really fast reps of that. As I said, every time we'll do a good half an hour warm up with drills and so forth and exercise. It might be that younger kids of that age, we might have a session where they might do a 500, a 400, a 300. And the thing with my group, I might have older kids, they might be doing 1K reps. So I'll get the younger ones to join in and they might do a 500 and have a 2 to 3 minutes recovery. Then they might do a 400. So they're probably a typical session that some of them at that age will do. As they get older, they might develop into 1K reps or so forth.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you, and people might be interested in learning those younger kids you're just talking about doing like a 5, a 4, and a 3. I think you said if that was right. How hard are they running? How hard are you asking them to run? Because I do know that, you know, I see some people think it should be all flat out, and some people think, you know, what do you say to the intensity, I suppose, of those repetitions?
Yeah, look, you never train at 100%, never. And once again, it depends on the athlete itself. You know what times they can do. Probably I might even say, as I said, at the age of 12 or 13, I might get them, they might only be going at 80%. And you can tell an athlete how they're responding. You know, if they're buggered, shall we say, you might tell them to back off the pace and so forth. That's where it gets difficult because a lot of keen athletes they'll be looking at their watch, you know, and thinking, oh, I've got to go faster. Or they'll talk to other athletes and they say, oh, we're doing 600s and we're doing them in this time. So they say, oh, I should be going faster. But I don't believe you never train at 100%. So it is depending on their ability again. You might have them run at 75%, you might have them run at 80%. And that will progress as they get older.
So I suppose, so we've covered a little bit about technique and a little bit about training methods and programs there, I suppose. Now, if anybody would like to ask questions through the chat box, you can do that. Please remember you can ask extra questions through the chat box. But, so Ian, with those sessions that you're doing, you said a couple of times a week is for the primary school age kids. Would you say? And you know, is that what your recommendation is?
Yeah, I think kids from, you know, let's say 10, 11 and 12 that are probably still in primary, I wouldn't like them to do any more harder sessions than a couple of times a week. Look, they may say on a weekend or Sunday, they could go for another little run. Might be 20, 25 minutes. They could go for a run with their parents, or they could ride a bike. But in terms of aerobic sessions probably don't hurt the young kids too. Lots of kids have got heaps of aerobic ability. Kids will go to school and they'll probably run 5K around a soccer field, you know, all this. They'll come home, they'll run around playing cricket and everything. And the other thing is this, you've got to remember that children of that age are also probably playing football, soccer, or rugby league and so forth. So they're probably training at least another day. So if you're going to say you've got to train 4 days a week, they're out there and they might, as I said, another 2 days playing soccer or netball or whatever, too much. Whilst I encourage kids to do a team sport, I believe in it until they're 16 or 17, find out what their niche is. Then if they're 17 or 18 and they want to do athletics, we say, okay, let's start training. So you've got to be careful. That's the thing, you've really got to be careful about the other sports that they do and you don't overload them. So I think at that age, probably 2 times a week is sufficient. If they want to go for another run or ride a bike. And as I said, playing the other sports, they'll get heaps of aerobic in. It's the anaerobic sessions that tax the young athletes. You've got to be careful.
Okay. So with a you know, training that can be quite tough, Ian, you know, for distance running, how do you keep your athletes in love with what they do? How do you keep them going? How do you keep them in the sport and loving what they're doing?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I suppose one thing I do is I might set a particular session, and this could be for the older athletes. And of course, I experiment, and I think coaches have to experiment. You've got certain standard sessions that distance runners will do. We know that. But you want to put your own touch to it. And if an athlete comes back and says, oh, that was a great session, goes in the memory box and I'll do it again. It is hard to keep the athletes involved in athletics because if they're good, rugby league will come along, soccer will come along, and AFL, and they see dollar signs and things like that. So, look, you've got to try and make it enjoyable. Maybe you've got to have some games, have relays. Relays are the greatest things ever. I often end up having a relay. There might be 4 or 5 of the young kids, some of the others, I'll mix them up and we'll have a relay. They love it. I think you've got to sort of keep them motivated by making it fun at that young age. And I'm talking probably 11 through to about 15 is the young ones. You've got to make it fun for them as well as building slowly their progression to harder sessions. So games, relays. You want them to come back at the end of a session and say, I love that. Can I come back tomorrow?
Ian, what are one of the relays? Give us an example of a relay that you find really successful with the kids.
Well, if I've got older kids, I might get them to do, okay, one of them will do an 800. Then another one will do a 400. And then I might have one of them stay over the 200, and they might do a 200, and the other one might do 100. So depending on the ages, I might just get them to do an 8-4, 2 and a 1, and things like that. Or just a straight out, up and back over 100 metres.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, you've seen a lot of, you know, athletes, you know, achieve some good success. What besides being, good athletes, Ian, are there any other traits that you see in young athletes who've made it and become, advanced at what they do?
Yeah, I think coaches also have to be bits of mentors. So we have to, once again, where communicating with the athletes are important. I think athletes also, it's hard, and I suppose I'm getting up to senior athletes. Unless you win a gold medal at the Olympics, there's not a lot of money in it. So athletes, I think, have got to have plan B in place. So naturally, I still encourage the athletes to pursue their education, pursue a job. Like I've got a couple of athletes now that are doing their HSC. And I know everything's been disrupted, but I've said to them, athletics may have to, well, they will. It will be on the back burn this year. But normally, I'll say to athletes, you have to do, when I say you have to, you should make your HSC important. So therefore, your athletic career and other sporting careers may have to take a back seat type of thing. So I do encourage, and I encourage them to, this is where like 2TP program and Little A's camps and so forth are very good, because they teach athletes, there is life after athletics, and they've also got to look at having other things in place. So I try to encourage them to get involved in those. This is once again where parents come in very much.
Now, that's a great segue where parents come in. A question has come through the chat box. That there are a couple there, and I will get to them, everybody. How do you deal with ambitious parents, Ian?
Look, I'm lucky. I've got to say, over the 30-odd years, I have had wonderful parents. Supportive. They let me coach. So I've probably got to say I haven't had to deal with it. But I will say this. I did have an athlete, a young kid. He was pretty good. And it's the worst thing you can do. And I tell athletes, you don't want to worry about the things you can't control. Come to an athletic meeting, it's raining, it's windy, the track's no good. If you can't control it, don't think about it. I had a parent that would get the start list and go through it. She would then say to her son, oh, you can beat him. You can't beat him. You haven't beaten him. You might beat him. Oh, you're going to have to go hard if you want to get a medal. The kid was gone before he started. That's, yeah, as I said, I really can't comment because I really haven't had to do with over-ambitious parents. So I've been lucky.
Very lucky. Yeah, you have. And another question that's come through, Ian, just very quickly, is a specific one. How would you deal with a teenager that wants you to coach them to do a half or a full marathon? And let's say they have an athletic age of 4 years.
Okay, so what age are they actually?
15 plus.
And they want to do a half marathon. Come back and see me in 10 years. Simple. Would not even consider at that age. Okay. I think it's, and I know, look, this is where it's hard. I know athletes that their parents, it's tradition to run the city to serve. It's tradition to do a half marathon. So they get their young daughter or son to come along. I've just got to say, they're still growing. Their bones are still growing. I've seen so many injuries from running on hard surfaces. And yeah, if a kid of 15 wants to be trained for half marathon, I'd say, sorry, mate, I can't do it. I wouldn't put you through that because I don't believe it's the right thing. Simple as that. Come back and see me in 10 or 15 years.
Okay. Thanks for that, Ian. No, that's
blunt. That's blunt, but I just, I'm not a great believer in volume, not for young kids in particular.
Okay. Please feel free to put questions in that chat box, everybody. Now, just moving on, Ian, I suppose, how have you learned as a coach, and how do you continue to learn as a coach and develop as a coach?
Simple answer, talk to other coaches. That's probably where I've learnt more. I mean, I got a library of books. I subscribe to many things, journals, websites. I go to conferences, etc. Sure, you learn there. But I get more knowledge having a beer or a coffee talking to another coach. And I've got a good circle of coaching friends, and we do converse a lot. And quite frankly, I've learnt more over all these years from talking to other coaches. Yeah, we've got a great bunch of coaches in Australia, and to the other coaches that are just starting out, make that communication. It's a great thing, and that's probably where I've learnt so much. Yeah.
So what do you see coming up next for you in coaching, Ian? You've been coaching, what was you tell us, 30 something odd years. What's coming up next for you? What does the future hold in coaching?
Well, hopefully, God willing, that as I said, I'm 76. I'll be 77 in September. I can still get around. As I said, I've got to ride a bike most of the time on when I, with say someone like Sally, someone like Chloe, I ride the bike while she runs. So I just love coaching. As I said, hopefully I can continue, for as long as my body lets me to. And I just want to hopefully just continue helping young athletes, bring them along steadily, and get a lot of pleasure from it. So, just keep on keeping on if I can.
Keep on keeping on. And look, a question has, before we just round off my final questions, the one's just come through. What should you eat, Ian, immediately after a distance session? Do you give your athletes any advice on nutrition? Immediately after a session, what should they be having? Any thoughts?
Yeah, they do say in all the journals and books that to replenish your body with carbohydrates, you should do it within the first 20 minutes after a session. It's very difficult for an athlete, whether they've brought along fruit, biscuits, bananas, sandwich, or anything, to chew into that. So they wait until they get home, and that could be an hour or two before they have their meal. Probably if you want to get technical, it's probably too late. Probably the thing that I've been involved in, and I do, some of my athletes do take it, is it's a product called Endura Optimizer. I've probably had it way back when the bloke who sold me on it was Pat Rafter, the tennis player. He used to take it when he was playing tennis. It's a Australian product. They're up in Queensland. It's called Endura Optimizer. What it has, it's got a degree of protein, but a lot of carbohydrates, and it's got a lot of magnesium. So Ryan, when he did it, Ryan would bring Sue, his mother, would make up heaps of bottles of it, freeze them. He'd bring his bottle along, and after training, he'd drink that. So if there is a drink that parents know of, which is replenishing drink, such as has carbohydrates in it, if you've got magnesium in it, that's even better, because that's a muscle recoverer. Having a drink after is good, because a lot of kids, I don't think, want to eat straight after a session. I could be wrong. I don't know. What's your thoughts from little A's? Do a lot of kids want to snack into something straight after they've trained?
A lot don't come overly well prepared, and possibly just use the food outlets that are at the ground, I think, Ian, to tell you the truth. But
yeah. Look, I think, as I said, within that first 20 minutes, it's good to get that replenishing food or drinks, carbohydrates into you straight away. And just quickly on that, diet is so important. It's important also for athletes, both male and female. If they're starting to feel tired, fatigued and everything, go and get their iron levels checked. You can bet most times that their iron levels will be low. That's where nutritionists come in once again. I think most parents will cook good, healthy meals. I'm quite sure of that. I suppose we all eat a bit of rubbish. It's all about being balanced. Sure, you can have McDonald's. Nothing wrong with having, they make the best coffee. There's nothing wrong with having McDonald's every so often. But I think everything's got to be balanced. I'm not a great believer in, as they get older, all these great supplements. I don't think you need it. If you've got a good diet, you don't need a lot of supplements. So, but diet's important. and your blood and your iron levels are so important.
Thanks for that, Ian. You certainly imparted a great deal of wisdom on us this evening, and I hope people have enjoyed your answers there. So, look, that's the final one of my questions. So, thanks for your time in answering those, Ian. It's been great having you answer those questions, and I appreciate you being so generous with your time and your answers tonight.
Yeah, as I said, we could go on for hours about different things. It is hard to cover everything and trying to think of things, but yeah, it's if there's any other questions that anyone wants to ask, hopefully I can do it. The other saying I have: success is a marathon, not a sprint.
Thanks for that, Ian.
So it may take a while, and I'm not too concerned about. Sometimes a lot of parents want their child to be the under 12 and under 14 Australian champion. That's great, but no one remembers the under 12 or under 14. So we've got to bring them through steadily. As I said, Ryan saw the backside of first, second, third, fourth and fifth for many, many years as a junior. I want to progress them through that they go to senior level and go on and represent Australia at the Olympics. So don't be too worried if they're coming second, third, fourth and that for a while. Just keep them involved, keep them motivated. Their time will come.
That's a great message, Ian. Thanks for that.